Hello there, Ray here, and today I will be showing my simple wither skeleton farm. This wither skeleton farm is designed so that it can be built up very quickly, as well as also gives you very good rates. I would recommend this type of wither skeleton farm for the majority of players because it can be built up quickly with a minimal amount of resources, yet it will allow you to get 3 wither skeleton skulls per minute without having to do too much work. This is the wither skeleton farm that we built on the ProtoTech server as a temporary wither skeleton farm, and we built this very quickly up on there, but there is a link in the description to that video so you can actually see how we came about and built this wither skeleton farm in a survival world. So the way that this wither skeleton farm works is pretty simple. There's 3 layers where wither skeletons and other nether fortress mobs can spawn on, which is these layers of packed ice. Then the gases come by and push all of the mobs off the edge over here. Then they fall down. Then they come through these vines, which allow them to get slowed down. Then their fall distance gets reset on the other side of these vines, and then they fall a distance and get damaged by hitting the ground here. And then we have another gas that pushes all the mobs towards the center here, which they fall down into an area where the player can just swing his sword and kill them. Whenever I need a quick wither skeleton farm, this is the type of wither skeleton farm that I build. I have built 4 of these up over the course of time. From 1.7 version all the way up to 1.8, and I probably will still use this in 1.9 since it's so easy to build. And I have built this on the ProTech server as well as 3 other survival servers, and it allows me to acquire the wither skulls as well as other nether fortress loots that will be needed to build other farms. So I'm using a mod by Meganix which allows me to see the bounty boxes of the nether fortress. This is a utility mod, and I will put a link in the description to his video explaining this mod and where you can actually download it. But this mod allows me to see the area in which the mobs will spawn inside the nether fortress, as well as the entire bounty box that goes around the nether fortress. So unlike the wither grave, which uses the entire large bounty box that goes around the entire nether fortress here, and also uses nether brick so that the mobs from the nether fortress can actually spawn on the nether brick. The simple wither skeleton farm will only use these intersections and use these small walkway bounding boxes. And here we will use 2 intersections which have a decent amount of spawning spaces, but while using the intersections we can place down any block which mobs will normally spawn on. And since it's within the small walkway bounding box, the nether fortress mobs will spawn on it. That's why we can put packed ice in this area and the nether fortress mobs will spawn on it. Another way that the wither grave differs from the simple wither skeleton farm is that with the wither grave, the bedrock blocks are removed above the spawning pads of the wither grave, so that the bedrock blocks themselves do not increase the height of the chunk here, so that the mobs themselves can actually spawn in more quickly. Also with the wither grave, the entire farm is placed at the lowest part of the big bounding box of the nether fortress, and it actually is within the first sub-chunk, and there's nothing exceeding that sub-chunk, so that the entire wither grave is actually at the lowest point so that it can spawn in mobs more quickly than as if it were at the top part. But with the simple wither skeleton farm, we are not going to remove any of the bedrock above the wither skeleton farm spawning pads just to keep things simple. Therefore we don't have to worry about what Y level the intersections are at or where we build the farm. But if you would want to remove the bedrock above the wither skeleton farm, you can actually find intersections such as these here, which are at the lowest point possible inside of a nether fortress. So the intersection itself is at the lowest point, as well as the big bounding box of the entire nether fortress. And the lowest that they can spawn around is around Y level 47. So in this case you can actually find the intersections to be quite low, and this would actually help you get better spawn rates if you would remove the bedrock. This also allows you to build the entire farm within this sub-chunk and not exceed any other sub-chunks. The intersection bounding box is actually tall enough so that we can have 3 layers to spawn in wither skeletons and other nether fortress mobs. The bottom layer is down here with the ice. Even though it's outside of the bounding box, the mobs themselves are actually spawned within inside of the bounding box, and therefore we can actually get the wither skeletons to spawn inside of here. Up here at the very top layer we actually have 1 meter difference that we can actually work with. Since this layer here at this level has to have the bounding box here, we can either have the farm at this layer or else we can move it up 1 layer if we have the farm up here. Having the ability to move the entire farm up or down 1 meter is useful because in some cases the gas does not push the mobs that are on top of this ice layer here. This is just because the gas themselves are kind of in between 2 different sub-chunks. So right now the gas is down here at 78, And we got a sub chunk here at 79, and the next sub chunk starts up here at 80. So to avoid this, you just have to avoid a couple locations of putting the spawning floor. So the spawning floor here, you just don't want to have the spawning floor at level 65Y, 66Y, or 81Y like this one, or 82Y. Now if you avoid those and avoid other subchunks if you go higher, I don't think the Nether Fortress allows you to go any higher, but if you do this, use this for like a pigment farm, you want to avoid that as well. The lava slimes can spawn inside this farm, but the medium size and the large size lava slimes are the most annoying since they do not have like a 1x1 footprint like most mobs, so we can't just easily funnel them down this hole. So to prevent the large ones and the mediums from spawning, we have doors in here, and these doors are spaced out so that only the tiny slimes can spawn in here, because they can spawn in a 1x1 footprint like on other mobs, but the medium sized ones will need at least a little bit extra on either side of them, so they'll need a little bit more than a full block here. Like if there was a chest over here, they could spawn. If there was a chest over here, they could spawn. But since there's a door over here, they can't spawn. They can't spawn here since there's a door over here as well. You cannot just place these doors in any directions and have wither skeletons spawning, because wither skeletons are slightly larger than the other normal mobs that spawn inside the fortress. Here you can see there's a wither skeleton with a normal skeleton right beside it, and you can see there's a little bit difference in their hitbox. And the skeleton here is not even, he's not going into side of this door here. His hitbox is outside of it. Where the wither skeleton, his hitbox is inside this door, and this skeleton over here, he has his hitbox inside the door here as well. The difference is that the doors are facing this direction will actually allow this wither skeleton to spawn in, while the doors are facing this direction will actually prevent this wither skeleton from spawning in. Now even though these two wither skeletons seem the same, if I would come in and actually spawn these wither skeletons again, but without the no AI tag, so I currently just spawned them in without AI, so if I come in here and spawn one in with AI, you can see that he was even moved a little bit. He was even offset a little bit more, and during that time he was offset, he was actually moved over here, then he got sprung back to over on this side. So now let's remove that one and let's spawn one over here. Let's put one. Okay, now let's take away the AI tag. You can see how he got moved slightly. So you can see when the wither skeleton spawned in, his hitbox, the white line, is actually outside of the door, and then it gets moved over inside the door. This is probably something similar to when the wither skeleton is spawned in naturally. He will actually spawn offset a little bit so that he's not bumped up against the door, so therefore he can actually spawn in this area. Where if the door is on this side, he is offset a little bit inside of the door, so he cannot actually spawn there. So if the door is interfering into the east or the south side, the wither skeletons will spawn in it. But if you have a door that's like this, and the door is interfering into the west side or the north side, then the wither skeletons will actually not spawn there. So you cannot actually have a door up against another door, because that would actually prevent the wither skeletons from spawning. But with just a door on this side, we can actually have the wither skeleton spawn, as well as prevent lava slimes from spawning, but still allow other Nether Fortress mobs to spawn in this area. Now you don't have to use just wooden doors, you can also use iron doors. But with iron doors, you just have to face them the direction, and they'll stay that direction. Where while using wooden doors, you actually want to make sure the doors are technically open, and this is because pigmen can actually break down wooden doors. And if you have the wooden door so it's opened already, so a closed wooden door, the pigmen will see it and try to break down. Where an open door, the pigmen will see that's open, he won't try to break it down. So to get the open wooden doors, if you want to go with wooden doors, you have to place down a wooden door so that the hinges are on this side, and then you have to close it, or technically you're opening it. So now if you look at it, it says that the door is open, and same as the other ones, so now the pigmen will not try to break down the doors. Now the pigmen will not typically break down doors if the farm's always operated, but when you shut the farm off, the pigmen will spawn in here and then break down the doors. And another thing for using doors that are wooden versus using iron is just so that it's easier to get wooden resources than it is to get enough resources to build iron doors. Now on our SMP server we built iron doors just because we had a lot of iron, but iron doors are probably easier to place since you don't have to close them all. You don't have to place them too specifically either, but with the wooden doors you can just save on resources. So on the middle floor here, we're actually using the doors to protect the rails. And the rails are what the ghast and the minecarts are riding on. And over here we can still have wither skeletons spawn, without worrying about something like a tiny lava slime from actually getting pushed underneath the rail, and then that would actually stop the gas from moving back and forth on the cart. But over here on this side, we have it so that there's just some blocks here, because we cannot actually stick in any doors here, because that would prevent the wither skeletons from spawning. And since this is a wither skeleton farm, we are trying to get wither skeletons to spawn. Now if we just put the doors there, we would allow other mobs to spawn, and that would just hold up the mob cap, preventing the wither skeletons from spawning elsewhere. So we can just block that up, and therefore we can have the wither skeletons spawn in their proper place. There are levers underneath of the spawning floor here, and these levers do not actually block the spawning of the wither skeletons, even though they spawn and they are up into the 3rd meter of the spawning place here. But if this lever was one lower, it would actually block the spawns from spawning down here. And the bottom floor is similar to the top floor, where there's just spaced out doors. And the doors are just spaced out just so that you can use less resources rather than having doors in every row. But this farm consists of using 10 gas and 11th gas down there for the collection area. And the gas on the bottom layer are not inside the farm, so that we can save spawning spaces above the farm. And then we have another layer up here that are completely without gas. And then this center layer, we waste some of the spawning spaces for having the gas. The way that I get 11 gas into the farm is by using my simple gas catcher. This allows you to catch a gas in minecarts, and then even be able to get them name tagged, and then put them down into the farm. I will put a link in the description to that video so that you can see how to make a simple gas catcher, but it's pretty simple. If you have any questions how we actually get the gas into the farm, you can watch my SMP episode where we put the gas into the farm, and we actually build this entire farm up, and it goes pretty smoothly, and we get done very quickly as well. Once you get the gas inside the farm, you don't want to actually be down here like at this layer where the gas can actually see you and try to shoot at you and will destroy your farm. So that's why the sides of this farm are all built out of stairs, so that they are actually blocking the view of the gas from the players if the players are outside. Now the stairs are actually also transparent, so they don't affect the spawning rates what's inside of the farm. And instead of using like slabs where there would be a hole in them, the stairs allow that so that there's no holes as well. Now on the back side here, we actually have it so that the gas, when they are stopped, are inside of stairs, and these stairs are actually high enough so that they will prevent the gas from seeing the player in survival. And on the back side here, we also got a off switch to all the power rails here, so you can shut off the different layers you want to. Now you can always route this lever somewhere else so that you can operate it more easily. Now also on this side, you can see that the stairs also prevent the gas from suffocating, because some of these gas are actually partly inside of this wall here. So we don't just have the stairs at the spawning level, we actually have them all throughout just to keep it simple, so that you don't accidentally put down some solid blocks and suffocate your gas and kill them off. So right before the mobs fall all the way down to their death, we have some vines here. And these vines are somewhat near the level of where the gas are pushing, so that the gas can actually push the mobs if they happen to keep riding on top of these vines. And if you have experience with vines and mobs, sometimes the mobs will just keep riding on top of the vines, similar to these lava slimes here. And that's why on either end of the vines here we have an open space with a cactus out there, so that eventually the lava slimes will pathfind to the edges, and then they'll pathfind onto this ice here. And then when the gas comes by, it'll push the lava slime from the ice into the cactus, and therefore you can get rid of the lava slimes that actually just keep riding these vines and do not fall down with other mobs. So when the gas comes by, it'll push the mobs, and then they will fall down through the vines, which allows the top mobs and the bottom mobs to be able to fall the same distance once they fall through the vines. And there's some buttons here to prevent the vines from going downwards. Then there's just a shaft that allows the mobs to fall down nice and straight, and this is made out of stone. It can be made out of any material. And then once you come down here, there is just a layer of ice down here. This is just normal ice, so that other mobs cannot spawn down here when you're away from the AFKing area down here. Now, once the mobs have reached down here, there is a gas that's going back and forth on a rail, and he is just pushing the gas, or all the mobs from either side, towards the center. When the mobs get pushed towards the center, they will fall down in this hole here, where we can easily kill them. Now, to prevent the mobs from falling too far distance and falling straight down into the hole, there is this slab here, which allows the mobs to land on top of the slab. Then they'll eventually get pushed off by the gas. Now, the mobs that are down in the hole will be able to get killed by the player, but there are several different options that can be used to kill the mobs more efficiently. I actually have 6 different variations of killing chambers for this farm. So these 3 over here are for 1.9 versions and all above versions, and these versions over here are for like the 1.7 and 1.8 versions. Now the current version that I got on the farm right now is a one that I use to actually have the mobs get removed that the player would not want to kill. So the player wants to kill the wither skeletons, so instead I have the blazes, the pigmen, as well as the skeletons get warped over into another portal, and then from there they will be killed off. So this variation of the killing chamber is for 1.9, so we have the gas here that's pushing all the mobs towards a central location, which is the easiest so that the player can use the sword swing attack that will allow him to kill multiple mobs at once. Now the mobs land on ice so that they can slide easily towards the center, and once they get to the center here they will drop down far enough so that they're not interfering with new mobs that are coming in, so they're not like their bounty boxes aren't bouncing off other mobs. And then once they fall down, we have pistons that are at the 2-meter high mark so that they only be able to pull in mobs that are 2 meters high. But the wither skeletons are 3 meters high so that they're not affected by the pistons here. Now this allows the pistons to pull in the blazes, the pigmen, as well as the skeletons. And once they get pulled over here into the portal here, they will be able to teleport over into the overworld. Now from here, the mobs will get pushed out from the portal, and then they'll get pushed into these water streams. Now the blazes will take more damage from water and they'll die fairly quickly, where the skeletons and the pigmen will eventually get pushed up and they will drown in the water. If there's any chickens that get through from chicken jockeys, I have put in some solid blocks here so that the chickens will actually suffocate if they swim up and into the solid blocks. Now the reason why this actually works, that the mobs are actually going through the portal and they're loading the overworld, and we are currently turning the overworld loaded chunk into an entity processing chunk by using these hopper chunk loaders down here that are loading a 5x5 grid. This allows it so that the mobs that are actually over here in the overworld will actually suffocate. Otherwise they will just keep building up in the overworld until they leg your entire world up, and then you'll probably get kicked out because you don't have enough memory. So the purpose of putting the mobs through the portal is that as soon as they go through the portal, they're no longer interfering with the mob cap that is in the nether, so that we can actually have more mobs spawn in the farm, and hopefully some of those mobs will be more wither skeletons. This way we can keep acquiring wither skeletons while getting rid of the so-called trashy mobs. The tiny lava slimes as well as the baby pigmen are not pulled into the nether because they are too short for this piston up here. But I didn't put down a lower piston because that would also pull in the XPs, as well as the loots would get pulled in over into another portal, which we don't want them into the overworld. So these mobs here will actually just be killed off every time the player sits here with his sword and swings. He will actually kill off the baby pigmen as well as the lava slimes that just hang out in this area. Now underneath the mobs are your hoppers, which you can collect the loot with. Now you can send these off into any type of storage system you want, but with just wither skeletons here, you probably won't have as many loots as in some of the other versions where I keep all the mobs and kill them. So ideally when you're killing these mobs, you'll want to be standing here, swinging your sword with your sweeping attack, allowing you to kill off multiple wither skeletons at once. Now the wither skeletons will be down to half a heart, so most wither skeletons will actually be killed with a single swipe of your sword. And you have to be able to click less than once per second to get the sweep attack. Now ideally you would want a sword that has mending on it as well as looting 3 as well as unbreaking 3, so that you can actually sit here and use the experience points that you get off the wither skeletons to repair your sword, and looting 3 will actually allow you to get more skulls as well. Now having a regeneration beacon is helpful so that once you run out of hunger you don't have to actually eat more food, and therefore you won't die from the hunger effects. Now you can also get strength too, which is helpful in some of the other types of farms where you're actually trying to kill blazes as well. Now the place where the player will be AFKing is on top of these snow layers here by this chest. This will allow you to be up high so that the blazes will not be able to see you, and also be able to stand far enough back so that the blazes will not be able to hurt you. Now the way that you get on top of these 7 layers of snow here is that if I put up my hitboxes, I can show you that when you are just normally standing, your hitbox is somewhat tall, but if you hit crouch or your shift key, you can actually lower your hitbox. So normally you cannot actually walk up these layers of snow, but once you have hit your shift key, your player is a little bit lower hitbox and he can climb up on top of these snow layers. And then from here, you can actually be pushed back against this chest here. Then you can just whack with your sword and just kill all the wither skeletons that come into the farm. So with this type of variation of the killing chamber for this farm, it's the best when it comes to getting the most skulls per minute. You can get over 3 skulls per minute using this method with this farm. This is just because the majority of the mobs are put through the nether portal, and therefore more mobs can spawn, and as soon as you use your sweep attack you can easily kill off the wither skeletons that are within the killing chamber so that more mobs can spawn. Downside is that you have to deal with the mobs going through the nether portal, which causes a little bit of lag. Now, in single player, it's not really too noticeable, but in multiplayer, it would probably get more noticeable. But you can see that I can easily deal with the slight jitteriness of this. Like, you see this gas when he moves, he'll jitter sometimes, and that's just when the mobs go through the nether here. They kind of slow down time for a little bit. So with this variation over here, we don't send the mobs over into the overworld. Instead, we have the player kill them. So the mobs are pushed just like the other one down here. Then there is a activator or a pressure plate here that just comes over here and will pulse these pistons, which will allow the mobs to fall through the blocks and then get suffocated inside of these solid blocks. All the 2 high mobs, as well as the baby pigmen and even the lava slimes, will jump up and get suffocated, where the wither skeletons will not get suffocated. And down here, the player will just sit here and you can swing your sword and kill all the mobs off. So with this type of killing chamber, you would probably want to have that strength 2, which would help you, because with the blazes coming in, they wouldn't have any damage done to them until they come through the crushers. So that way you can kill the blazes off more quickly. I would recommend this type of killing chamber for the majority of players, just because you don't have to have the nether portal, as well as you don't have to have the large lava slimes. Last killing chamber is set up for large and medium lava slimes. So if you want to have large or medium lava slimes spawn into the farm, you can just remove the doors on the top and the bottom layers of the farm. Then with the slime spawning, you have so that there's enough room between these trap doors and this cobble wall here so that large and medium sized lava slimes can actually fit in here. But once they come down in here, they can actually be crushed by a crusher on the side here. And then once they crush into medium sized ones, there's a double crusher down here that will crush them. And then all the other mobs will slide down and get pushed over by the gas like the normal farm. Now I never set up a system to actually collect the magma cream, but you could probably put in a system to collect the magma cream. So over here are the 3 1.8 versions of this farm, and here is the version where you can collect the magma cream. This one works a little better because the magma cream will actually get pushed over to the side, and then it'll come down, and underneath of these repeaters here are hoppers. So this allows you to actually collect magma cream, and it's pretty similar to the other one where the mobs will go down and there's a double crusher. Then here there's some vines just to reset the fall damage, and then down here there is a ocelot. You don't need an ocelot, but ocelot will allow you to kill off the chickens that come from the chicken jockeys without having a player here actually kill them. And then it's optional, you can either use dogs or like a minecart. This version I have dogs here, and the player would just AFK in the center here, and the dogs would kill off the wither skeletons. And there's also a crusher over here which would kill off the 2 high mobs, and even the baby pigmen and the tiny lava slimes would actually get killed off as well. So right here is the 1.8 version without the big or medium sized lava slimes, and the wither skeletons as well as other mobs will come down and other ones will get crushed, where the wither skeletons will not get crushed because they're taller. And then we have dogs in here which will come and just kill off the wither skeletons and allow you to get wither skulls. And the ocelot is named and it'll just get rid of the chickens. But in 1.9 above versions, you cannot actually use dogs to acquire the wither skulls from the wither skeletons. This is a bug in 1.9 above, and it happened when they started changing the loot tables of everything in the game. Now, there is a bug tracker on this bug, and I greatly appreciate it if everyone would upvote the bug so that it can eventually be fixed in future versions. Right here is the 1.8 version of the killing chamber, which uses the minecart and the player to actually whack at the mobs that are inside of the killing chamber here and you kill them off. This is similar to the wither grave, but with this one you can use the crusher, or you don't have to use a crusher, because the crusher will damage some of the mobs that took damage, like it'll help you kill off the pigmen as well as the skeletons. But the blazes can actually be killed off more quickly by the player just using the sword. And underneath of the farm is just hoppers, and if you're doing a temporary farm you could just put up a bunch of chests, and then once you're done using the farm you can just collect your wither skulls out of the chest. Or else you can just hook this up to like a sorter. So on our SMP server, which is in 1.8, we have a combination of using the dogs for one side, which can kill off the wither skeletons if you want to AFK. And then on the opposite side, we actually have a rail, so the player can kill off the wither skeletons with a sword if he wants to do that. So we actually combine them, and it works pretty well. So there's 6 different options that you can use for the simple wither skeleton farm. 3 for the 1.8 versions, and 3 for the 1.9 and above versions of Minecraft. If you're using the 1.9, probably go with the portal if you're single player, and probably go with this method for multiplayer, just so you don't have to lag your server down with a nether portal. There is a world download of this world in the description, so you can see the main wither skeleton farm and how to build it, as well as the 6 options for the killing chambers. There you have it, guys, a simple wither skeleton farm that can be built up quickly with very little effort. So if you found this interesting, show me with a like. If you'd like to see more contraptions like this for survival, subscribe, and don't forget to comment. Bye!